After I told the instructor I wanted to redesign the training plan myself, she stared at me for a while without saying anything. The other recruits were watching too. Most of them were still struggling to breathe from the drills. Then Instructor Mo Jing-sin uncrossed her arms and announced she was holding a red versus blue competition the next day. The format was simple: me against every recruit at once, with everyone's level set to the same baseline. The plaza got loud immediately. One recruit from Genuine Academy spoke up and said this was insulting. That they weren't weaklings, that my talent was one thing, but making the whole group gang up on me one-on-one was treating them like they didn't matter. A lot of others felt the same way. The instructor wasn't moved. She told them straight. None of them had completed the day's training, so they had no grounds to talk about dignity. She said in Tianlong, strength is dignity, and right now they didn't have enough of either. If they had a problem with it, they should prove it by beating me in the competition. She called it a chance to show they weren't useless. That landed hard. Shen Jinglei and Shi Yanqing both looked ready to fight on the spot, and I could tell everyone had decided they were going all out when the time came. I agreed to it and moved on. Free time had started, and I had about 4 hours left, so I headed to the dungeon area to run a clear. Inside the dungeon, there were no level restrictions or skill limits, so I was back to full strength. I called out 10 money ghosts and ran a hell mode clear of the Shadow Demon Cave. The difference from last night was noticeable. The full day of close-range combat had sharpened how I read fights in real time. I started directing the money ghosts with actual precision instead of just letting them swarm. The monsters barely got a formation together before they fell apart. Final time, 25 minutes and 14 seconds. Last night, the same dungeon took me 37 minutes. 12 minutes cut in a single day. I came back out to the plaza. Most recruits were still on the ground recovering. I used life-buying money to top off, then went straight back in for a second run without stopping. It took a moment before anyone noticed. One recruit looked at the monitoring screen above the dungeon gate and asked if that had been me. Someone next to him checked the time and said I'd been in there for about 25 minutes. The group around them went quiet. When people realized I'd cleared the dungeon in 25 minutes, it hit them hard. Shen Jinglei couldn't believe the time. Shi Yanqing pointed out what mattered more. It was Hell Mode. For top recruits, a same-level Hell Mode dungeon as a full team in good condition takes 2 or 3 hours. I did it solo after 20 hours of extreme training. Before anyone could sit with that, Instructor Mo Jing-sin told everyone to stop staring and get back to training. The recruits were drained, but seeing my numbers pushed them to keep going. Shen Jinglei bit his tongue to stay awake and went back to the reaction training chamber. Shi Yanqing headed back into the mental pressure chamber. Everyone pushed through the last few hours. When the bell rang, people dropped where they stood. The custom training plans were essentially a complete failure. Even Shen Jinglei and Shi Yanqing only finished around 80%. Everyone wanted to complain the plan was impossible, but they couldn't because I'd done it with 4 hours to spare. I came out of the dungeon at level 112 and asked Instructor Mo Jing-sin when the competition was starting. The recruits on the ground were not pleased. She said 8 hours. Rest first, then the red versus blue competition. I said 8 hours was plenty and went back into the dungeon. The plaza was quiet for about half a minute. Then people started moving. Potions, recovery techniques, whatever they had. The mood shifted from exhaustion to anger. I came out when the time was up, at level 114. The recruits were fully recovered and sharper than when they'd arrived. The anger was helping their focus. Dozens of them locked onto me the moment I walked out. Instructor Mo Jing-sin explained the standard format. Normally, recruits split into 2 equal teams and compete on tactics, strength, and coordination. Then she said this time was different. The university recruits had all failed the 24-hour training, while a high school student finished it easily, and splitting the teams evenly risked one side getting wiped out by me alone. She announced the teams. I was the red team. Everyone else was the blue team. When Instructor Mo Jing-sin announced the team split, the recruits erupted. I noticed she's good at provoking people. After that, they'd be going into the fight wanting to destroy me completely. Instructor Xiaji then announced the rewards. 20 points each for the winning side, plus the top performer gets an unbound class equipment jar. The jar generates the best possible gear based on the opener's class. That mattered to me. My class is non-standard and compatible equipment basically doesn't exist on the market. I decided I needed that jar. I raised my hand and told Instructor Xiaji that 20 points for beating the entire group solo seemed low and asked if the reward could be higher. The recruits were furious that I was already calculating my winnings before the fight started. Instructor Xiaji laughed and agreed. If I wiped them all out alone, the points would go up to 500. Everyone put on the restriction bracelets that suppressed all levels to match mine. Instructor Mo Jing-sin read out the rules. Virtual combat space, fatal damage triggers a bracelet teleport instead of real death. 10-hour time limit, last side standing wins. Before we went in, Shi Yanqing told me that no matter how strong I was individually, it was impossible to beat all of them combined. Shen Jinglei said to get ready to feel what it's like being ganged up on. I told them we'd see after we fought, and the portal took us in. On the plaza, the instructors watched the monitor. Instructor Xiaji said Mo Jing-sin's method of working people up was getting sharper. She said extreme anger and pressure pulls out 200% of a person's ability. She was drawing out their potential. When Siaji asked who would win, both of them agreed without hesitation. I would lose. Their reasoning was straightforward. My recovery ability carried me through the training, but that doesn't decide a fight. The other recruits had years of professional combat training behind them. Technique, skill chains, positioning. One person against dozens of coordinated prodigies at equal level was close to impossible. Inside the virtual space, I hadn't even checked the terrain before a burst of magic erupted about 100 meters away. A summoner from Holy Spirit Academy had landed near me by chance. He had a rare light element golden dragon as his core summon, one of the stronger recruits. He said his luck was good for finding me right away, and called out his dragon before he'd finished talking. The dragon was over 20 meters long and spat golden breath that could melt steel. I stood where I was and didn't move. I summoned one money ghost and pointed it forward. That was it. The summoner from Holy Spirit Academy took that as an insult. He'd put out his best summon, a radiant golden dragon, one of the stronger creatures among the recruits. And I'd answered with a single unit. He yelled at me and told the dragon to push harder. The dragon breath temperature spiked and scorched the air around it. On the outside screens, Instructor Mo Jingxin called it immediately. A summoner who gets angry and goes solo against a strong opponent instead of regrouping with teammates loses the moment he commits. She did note, though, that sending only one money ghost against a radiant golden dragon was a stretch on my end, too. Instructor Siaji agreed. The dragon had high attributes and could realistically suppress a single summon. The money ghost didn't back up. It jumped straight into the dragon breath and punched through it. No skill, just a straight punch. The breath scattered. The summoner couldn't process what he'd seen. That breath would have stopped a shield guardian without a major ultimate. The money ghost didn't slow down, dodged the dragon's claw midair, and closed the distance to the summoner in the next second. The summoner stacked every shield he had and called the dragon back. Too late. The money ghost punched through all of it in one hit and triggered the bracelet. One shot. Before the teleport finished, the summoner used a sound transmission skill and broadcast a warning across the entire combat space. Don't fight me one-on-one, my summons are monsters. Back on the plaza, both instructors were quiet for a moment. Instructor Siaji said out loud that he couldn't believe what he'd just seen. Instructor Mo Jingxin said they'd underestimated me. The standard logic for multi-summon classes is that individual creatures are weaker to compensate for quantity. But Instructor Siaji pointed out that the money ghost's raw strength and speed were actually higher than my own stats. A single basic summon had just one-shot a top college recruit at equal level. The summoner came out of the teleport array looking shaken, still sweating, legs unsteady. He stood there and didn't say anything. Back on the plaza, Instructor Mo Jingxin walked up to the summoner and asked where he went wrong. He said he'd been too impulsive. He'd figured that even if he couldn't win, he could use the dragon's speed to create distance and escape. He never got the chance. She told him that a summoner who loses the ability to kite is just a target, and sent him off. Inside the wilderness, the warning broadcast reached everyone. Shen Jinglei called the summoner an idiot, but took the point seriously. He said even he wouldn't duel me one-on-one. And started moving fast to find teammates. Shi Yangqing reached the same conclusion and did the same. I found the warning more amusing than anything. I figured the others would group up quickly now, which was fine by me. The sooner it ended, the sooner I could get back to the dungeon. I picked a direction and started walking. A recruit from Tianwu Academy named Yin Song was already moving toward the nearest friendly signal when he came over a sand dune and spotted me below. The moment we made eye contact, I pointed the money ghost at him. He didn't hesitate at all. No threats, no posturing, just turned around and ran at full speed. Instructor Siaji called that good judgment. Instructor Mo Jingxin agreed. Yin Song burned every movement skill he had. Windwalk, dash, double acceleration, and turned into a blur. He looked back and the money ghost was closing the gap anyway. 50 meters, 30, 20. He was a high agility class, and the money ghost, which looked heavy and slow, was faster than him. He turned mid-sprint and threw wind blades at it to buy time. They hit the armor and left nothing. No mark, no pause in the charge. The money ghost inherited 150% of my total stats, so his attacks didn't register as damage at all. The money ghost closed the last of the distance and hit him once. Bracelet triggered. Gone. Outside, the two instructors had just finished praising Yin Song's smart retreat. Then they watched him get one shot anyway and went quiet. Instructor Xiaji said out loud that you couldn't outrun it and couldn't hurt it, and asked what kind of fight that even was. Instructor Mo Jingxin didn't answer. The money ghost's stats had gone beyond what either of them considered normal for same-level combat. Yin Song came out of the teleport array looking blank. He'd turned and run the instant he saw me, used everything he had, and was still dead. He had no framework for what had just happened to him. Back on the plaza, Instructor Mo Jingxin started to walk toward Yin Song to debrief him, then stopped herself. There was nothing to critique. He'd made every right call and still lost in one hit. She let it go. Instructor Ziaji pointed out the real problem. I was eliminating people too fast. If the others didn't group up in time and I kept picking off stragglers, there was a real chance I'd win this. Instructor Mo Jingxin acknowledged she'd underestimated me, but noted that several groups had already started forming. The actual fight hadn't started yet. Inside the wilderness, a 5-person squad from Tianwu Academy had already assembled around a recruit named Shan Yang. The group was well-rounded. Heavy Knight up front, healer for support, mage and archer for control and damage, and Shan Yang as a high-burst melee fighter. They'd heard the combat nearby and guessed one of their people had just been eliminated. The archer suggested moving in to check. Shan Yang considered it. Taking me down with a full squad would be a win for Tianwu over the other academies, but decided against rushing in. He said to stick to the plan, gather more teams first, and avoid an upset. Then I walked over the sand dune above them. I'd followed the direction Yinsong ran from and found them. Shan Yang had to decide fast. 5 against 1, with a healer and cover skills available. Even if they couldn't win, retreating cleanly was an option. Running on sight would look bad in front of the other academies and the instructors. He decided to hold formation and test one wave, with orders to pull back immediately if something felt wrong. On the plaza, Yinsong watched this from the screen and was practically yelling at them to run. I sent the Money Ghost in. The Heavy Knight slammed his shield down and threw up an earth barrier around the squad. The Money Ghost's punch hit it so hard the Knight's feet plowed into the ground and he nearly went flying. The healer had to immediately pour heals into him just to keep him standing. The mage locked down the Money Ghost's position with control skills, and Shan Yang and the archer hit it from the sides. The armor-piercing arrow didn't break through. The Money Ghost took a small step back from the combined impact but held. The squad didn't collapse. The Knight absorbed hits with constant healer support. The mage kept interrupting the Money Ghost's charge rhythm with microcontrols, and Shan Yang and the archer kited and chipped away at range. They were actually trading in the short term. I watched from the top of the dune and paid close attention. This was the first time I'd run a Money Ghost against a full coordinated team. I worked out what each role was doing. The Knight's shield bash had a stun built in. The mage's skills weren't for damage, but for movement denial. I kept micromanaging the Money Ghost while I learned their patterns. The fight hadn't gone long, but I was already getting a lot out of it. Shan Yang's squad was coordinated enough to hold briefly despite the stat gap, but they could feel the Money Ghost's movements getting sharper as the fight went on. They also knew I had 10 of them total. One was already pushing 5 people to their limit. Shan Yang called the retreat. Mage and archer threw their cover skills, and all 5 broke in different directions. I let them start running, then pointed out that if they'd scattered the moment we met, I wouldn't have been confident catching all of them. Now it was too late. I summoned 2 more Money Ghosts and sent all 3 out in a triangular formation to cut off their escape routes. The Money Ghosts were faster, and I was tracking every dodge and skill direction, so there was no clean path out. The Heavy Knight and Healer were cut off within 100 meters and taken out together in one hit. Shan Yang told the others to go and turned back to buy time, hitting a Money Ghost with his best attack. It sparked off the armor. The second Money Ghost punched him out before he finished. The archer went down right after. That left the Tianwu mage. The moment Shan Yang stayed behind, the mage activated his flight skill, Wind Wings, and climbed to about 100 meters up. He figured melee summons couldn't touch him at that height, and started taunting me from the air. One of the Money Ghosts looked up, pulled golden energy out of the air, shaped it into a longbow, and shot him out of the sky. The mage had no time to react. He went out saying he couldn't understand how a heavy melee summon was using active skills. On the plaza, Instructor Sia Ji and Instructor Mo Jingxin both went quiet. She said it was one thing for the base stats to be that high, but the Money Ghost also having a high burst active skill was something else entirely. Shan Yang's squad came out of the teleport array looking blank. Yinsong gave them a tired laugh. Shan Yang sat down and said if he'd known, he would have scattered immediately when we met. Maybe saved 1 or 2 people. Then he said at least the mage got away on his wind wings. He figured I couldn't do anything to someone at 100 meters altitude, so the squad wasn't completely wiped out. Shan Yang was still mid-sentence about the mage escaping when the mage walked out of the teleport array. Everyone went silent for a few seconds. Shan Yang jumped up and asked what happened. The mage said one of the Money Ghosts had pulled out a longbow and shot him down from 100 meters up in one hit. The group processed that. Melee immune to chip damage, faster than agility classes, and now ranged burst too. The Heavy Knight added the part that broke everyone. I could summon 10 of these at once. The plaza went quiet and people sat down on the ground. Instructor Zia Ji turned to Instructor Mo Jingxin and said carefully that the result might have a slight deviation from what they'd predicted. She couldn't argue with that. Inside the wilderness, a Tianwu recruit named Lin Shun was heading toward a rendezvous point when he felt his academy's nearby signals go out all at once in seconds. He stood there trying to work out how a full squad couldn't even escape. While he was still processing that, a group from Shenji Academy came around a rock formation. Their leader, Wei Ming, invited him to join them. They were tracking me and thought their team composition was strong enough to win. Lin Shun looked at them and said if they wanted to go die, to leave him out of it. He told them Tianwu's 5-man squad had just been wiped out less than a kilometer away. Wei Ming's confidence disappeared immediately. Without arguing, the whole group fell in behind Lin Shun and headed toward the main force. The instructors watched and agreed. At least these ones were thinking clearly. Word spread fast as people converged. By the time the groups reached the basin where Shen Jinglei and Shi Yangqing were holding the main force, everyone knew a full coordinated squad had been wiped out completely. Shen Jinglei called it unreasonable. Shi Yangqing steadied the group. They had over 30 people. complete team composition, and a real chance if their tactics held. The mood was shaken, but still there. On my end, I'd been walking for 10 minutes and found nobody. I figured the early commotion had pushed everyone into one group. I spotted a high-weathered stone platform ahead, climbed to the top, sat down on a boulder, and waited. The main force's scout picked me up with detection skills and reported back. I was sitting at the highest visible point, not moving, not hiding, just waiting. Shen Jinglei said that was too arrogant, then quietly admitted to himself that if he had that kind of strength, he'd do the exact same thing. Shi Yanqing took command. Nobody disputed it, including Shen Jinglei. He'd been named best commander in the Academy League, and this kind of fight needed a single voice. Support classes stacked every buff available. Then the whole group moved toward my position. On the plaza outside, the eliminated recruits were watching the screens. Most agreed the final fight had come fast. Under half an hour since the start. The debate was whether 30-plus buffed and coordinated prodigies under Shi Yanqing could overcome the raw stat gap. Below the stone platform, Shi Yanqing told me this was a fight for everyone's dignity and they wouldn't hold back. I said to make it quick because I wanted to get back to the dungeon. That landed badly with most of the group. Shi Yanqing deployed immediately. Shields up front, ranged firepower and full suppression, thunderclouds and flamestorms covering the entire platform. I called out all 10 money ghosts at once, and let the barrage hit them. When the dust cleared, all 10 were untouched. I sent them forward. Shi Yanqing didn't panic. He called curse classes to slow the charge, gravity and ice controls to block paths, knights to taunt and separate individual money ghosts for kiting, and assassins to use the chaos as cover and go directly for me. Under his coordination, the charge actually slowed. The money ghosts got entangled and both sides stalled briefly. I watched and thought the team execution was genuinely impressive. The blue team thought the same thing about the money ghosts. 3 people working together to hold one was barely enough. Then an assassin came out of stealth behind me with poisoned dual blades aimed at my neck. The logic was sound. Take out the summoner and the summons disappear. I sidestepped without turning around, let the blades graze past my ear, and countered with a punch to his chest. He flew back dozens of meters. His life-saving skill absorbed most of the damage. Otherwise, it would have been a one-hit elimination. As it was, he survived. Barely. The assassin who'd tried to flank me survived on his life-saving skill, but couldn't process how I'd reacted in time. Shi Yanqing saw it too, and knew the tactics he'd arranged. Solid enough to rattle veterans. Weren't touching me. The fight kept going. The blue team's front line was taking damage and burning through potions and heals just to hold on. The money ghosts were taking wounds too, but it didn't slow them down. They hit harder the more damaged they got. Shen Jinglei knocked one back with a blade strike. The money ghost ignored a shoulder wound deep enough to see bone and punched back at his face. The front line was starting to feel like there was no way through it. The assassins kept trying. A few more came up to the platform in rotation looking for an opening. I punched or kicked each one off without looking away from the main fight. None of them got close. What I was actually focused on was the micro-control. With 30-plus coordinated professionals pushing back, I had to refine every individual money ghost movement. Diagonal steps to avoid skills while counterattacking. Position swaps to exploit blind spots. I could feel the control getting sharper in real time. The money ghosts started operating as one unit instead of 10 separate fighters, and the pressure on the blue team climbed with it. Shen Jinglei figured it out first. He told Shi Yanqing I wasn't trying to finish them. I was using them as a training target. The blue team absorbed that and went quiet. 30-plus top recruits from major academies, and they were functioning as free practice dummies. Shi Yanqing saw the same problem. My coordination was visibly improving every minute. If they waited any longer, they'd be ground down. He called it, Shen Jinglei holds the front for 3 seconds. Shi Yanqing charges his ultimate. Shen Jinglei surged lightning across his blade and pushed the money ghosts back a few meters. Shi Yanqing unleashed Wrath of the Wind God, a tornado of thousands of wind blades, and temporarily pushed all 10 money ghosts back dozens of meters, clearing a gap. Shi Yanqing called everything in. Every remaining recruit, every held back ultimate, all focused in one direction at once. Flame Furnace, Aurora, Piercing Arrow, Heavenly Punishment, Thunderstorm, 9 strikes of destruction. 30-plus all-out attacks converging into a single burst aimed at wiping the money ghosts out together. I watched it coming and smiled slightly. Then I snapped my fingers. All 10 money ghosts reached into the air simultaneously and pulled out golden longbows. Drew them at the same time. 10 arrow tips charged with golden energy, bright enough to hurt to look at. Shen Jinglei stared. He asked out loud, to no one in particular, how melee heavy armor fighters were drawing bows. Shi Yanqing recognized something was wrong the moment the 10 money ghosts drew their bows in sync. He called it a combo skill, but there was no time to react. The 10 arrows merged into one in midair, hit the blue team's combined elemental burst head-on, and tore straight through it. The full combined output of 30-plus recruits shattered on contact. The arrow kept going and hit the formation. 7 or 8 people were eliminated instantly. Shield guards, mages, archers, before anyone could move. The rest of the blue team just stood there. Shi Yanqing, Shen Jinglei, everyone. A female mage from Holy Spirit Academy sat down on the ground and started saying it had to be a bug. Her staff slipped out of her hand. Outside, the plaza went silent. The instructors were the same. Instructor Zia Ji finally spoke and listed it out. Outrageous base stats, no pain response, melee and ranged capable. And now combo skills, all before level 200. He said as a senior instructor he'd seen every kind of hidden class, but nothing matching all of that had existed in recorded history before level 400. He wanted to know what class I'd actually changed into. I didn't give the blue team time to recover. I sent the money ghosts straight in. With a quarter of their people gone and every ultimate already spent, the formation fell apart immediately. 5 money ghosts blocked escape routes. 5 pushed through the middle. The back row classes had nowhere to go. White teleport lights started going off one after another across the wilderness. Shen Jinglai held his saber and watched his teammates disappear one by one. He thought of himself as a top-tier genius who'd come to the training camp to make his name. Then he met me. He said out loud to no one, "Why did someone like me have to exist at the same time as him?" The fight had no suspense left. Shen Jinglai decided that if he was going down, he'd go down swinging. He jumped into the air with his full lightning ultimate aimed at the nearest money ghost. I shifted 3 money ghosts into a triangle around him. His strike landed on one, 2 punched him from the sides, the third kicked him simultaneously. He spat blood, laughed, and got teleported out. That broke what was left of the blue team's resolve. Fewer than 10 people remained, including Shi Yanqing. One of them suggested splitting up and hiding. The competition had a 10-hour limit, and a draw counted as not being fully eliminated. Everyone looked at Shi Yanqing. He shook his head. He said more than 30 people had ganged up on one. And surviving by hiding to claim a draw was not something he could call face. He gripped his sword, told them to die in battle, and charged. The rest followed without arguing. The last few fights ended the same way as the rest. When Shi Yanqing's shield finally broke, he let the teleport take him without resisting. The wilderness went quiet. I stood up, brushed off my pants, and the system confirmed the blue team was fully eliminated. I was teleported back to the assembly plaza. The plaza was completely silent. Every eliminated recruit was standing around watching me. The 2 instructors were staring too. Nobody said anything. I scratched my head and asked when the points in the class canister would be issued, and whether I still needed to show up for regular training after this. Instructor Mo Jingson looked at me for a moment before responding. She'd designed the 24-hour training and the 1 versus all format specifically to break down arrogance, to make someone with a powerful hidden class understand they still had to follow the camp's structure. The result was that I'd dismantled the whole setup and forced the first exception in the camp's history. She took a breath, then handed over the unbound class equipment canister and transferred 500 points to my token. Then she announced that for the remaining 3 months of the training period, I was exempt from all group missions and had the right to train freely on my own schedule. The other recruits were already bitter hearing about the free training access. Then I asked whether future competitions would have the same point and equipment rewards, and whether I could sign up again. The plaza went quiet in a different way. Shen Jinglai nearly lost it. Shi Yanqing closed his eyes. The general feeling was that if I participated again, the competition should just be renamed after me. Instructor Mo Jingson said there would be 2 more, 1 mid-next month, 1 on the final day of the 3 months, with better rewards each time. She confirmed I could participate. Then she added the condition. Starting from the second competition, level suppression would be lifted. Everyone fights at their real level and power. Shen Jinglai and Shi Yanqing reacted to that immediately. Their expressions shifted. For me, it didn't change anything. I said I'd be back for it, said I was going to grind dungeons, and left. The plaza stayed quiet for a moment, then broke into miserable complaining. Instructor Mo Jingson shut it down fast. She told them a high school student had beaten them and they were sitting around feeling sorry for themselves. She called out Shen Jinglai and Shi Yanqing by name and asked where their edge had gone. Then she laid out the actual picture for next month. No level suppression, level advantage on their side, numerical advantage on their side. If they still lost under those conditions, they were exactly what she'd been calling them. Shen Jinglai stood up and said he'd grind until it hurt and come back to destroy my summons. Shi Yanqing said losing once was fine, losing the will to fight back wasn't. The rest followed. The mood flipped from despair to anger in about 30 seconds. Then someone said quietly that if they won by using a level gap against a high school student, had they really recovered anything? Nobody answered that. I landed in the level 114 Hell Mode dungeon, Lava Purgatory. I went straight into the level 114 Hell Mode dungeon, Lava Purgatory, after the competition. The training fight had noticeably improved my money ghost coordination, and the clear went smoothly. While the money ghosts worked through the dungeon, I opened the class equipment canister. What came out was an epic grade item called the Lucky Coin, a dark gold coin about the size of a baby's fist with wealth and luck engraved on it. It had 2 effects, a permanent 20% drop rate increase when clearing dungeons, and an active skill called Master of Luck with a 24-hour cooldown that granted great fortune for 5 seconds. The drop rate bonus was exactly what I needed. The active skill description was vague enough that I wasn't sure how it would work in practice. But 5 seconds was short, so I decided to save it for the final boss. 20 minutes in, the boss, King of Destruction, Arcus, 100-meter Hellgrade Lord in obsidian armor, was down to 1% health. It triggered its death mechanic, a full self-detonation that takes everything in range with it. I activated Master of Luck. The effect was hard to describe. A feeling like I had full control over everything around me for those 5 seconds. What actually happened was the boss's self-detonation paused mid-charge, it spat magma, tripped over a piece of rubble, fell into the lava river, and triggered a 3-second paralysis. The self-detonation canceled completely. The money ghosts piled on and finished it. The loot drop was absurd. 3 epic-grade weapons and 4 rare potion recipes. Quick recovery and berserk among them, all from 1 clear. The 20% drop rate bonus from the coin was clearly already working. I was about to walk forward and collect it when a crack opened in the void behind the boss's remains. A spatial rift, pitch black and over a person's height, split open without warning. A small dark figure in a heavy trench coat stepped out carrying an oversized cloth bag with a tattered hat pulled low and eyes that flickered with gold light. There was no life presence on it, but the pressure it put out was enough to make it hard to breathe. I called out to the figure and kept my hand on the lucky coin, ready to use money talks. The figure seemed genuinely disoriented. It looked around, checked my level, and introduced itself as Xiao Hei, a traveling merchant who moves between dimensions. It said it had been headed to a level 700 mythical grade dungeon, and the coordinates had gone wrong by a massive margin. It called my level 114 dungeon a toddler grade dungeon. I found that insulting, but I also immediately thought this might be another effect of the lucky coin. Xiao Hei resigned himself to the situation and explained the merchant's code. When arriving somewhere unintended, it has to sell 1 random item to the first living thing it meets. It reached into the bag and pulled out a small crystal with shifting colored light inside. A mutated crystal. The effect was simple. Apply it to any active skill, and that skill undergoes an irreversible mutation. Better or worse, no guarantees. Xiao Hei was more shocked than I was. It said the crystal had a 1 in 100 billion drop rate in its inventory. It couldn't understand how I'd rolled it. I asked what the mutation actually did. Xiao Hei explained it was a gamble. A bad skill could become something extraordinary, or a good skill could be ruined completely. I thought about it for about a second. I had the lucky coin's effect still running. Bad luck didn't seem likely. I said I'd take it. The price was 20 million gold coins. I wasn't happy about it, but I paid. 20 million could be earned back. A mutated crystal wasn't something I'd find twice. Xiao Hei took the payment, said it looked forward to meeting me again, and stepped back into the rift. It closed behind it. I held the crystal and forced myself not to use it immediately. The lucky coin's active skill was on a 24-hour cooldown. I needed to wait for it to reset before gambling on a mutation. One day later, after grinding up to level 118 in a level 160 Hell Mode dungeon, I checked the cooldown. It had just hit 0. I took out the mutated crystal. The skill I'd decided on was Money Makes the Devil Mill. My most used skill by far. I activated Master of Luck and prepared to use the crystal. I activated Master of Luck and crushed the crystal, targeting Money Makes the Devil Mill. The mutation went through. When I called the money ghosts out, they weren't the same. Before, all 10 were identical. Faceless, uniform, no variation. Now they were all different heights and builds. The tallest was nearly 5 meters, heavily armored with a shield extension on its right arm. The shortest was around average human height, lean and agile and fitted soft armor. And their eyes were different. Instead of the blank dead light from before, they had alert, curious, intelligent pupils. The big one knelt on one knee and greeted me as master. The other 9 did the same in unison. I checked the stat panel. Each money ghost now had 2 independent skill slots instead of sharing 1 fixed skill across all 10. Before the mutation, whatever skill they all had the same one. All melee or all archers. Now each one could learn different skills independently. There was also a mechanism where canceling the summon or a death wipes the skills, which sounds like a downside but means I can clear and reconfigure skill loadouts whenever I want. I named them Money 1 through Money 10 by height. Then I set up their roles using skill books I'd accumulated from dungeon clearing. Money 1 and 2 got tank skills, Earth Barrier and Taunting Roar. 3 and 4 got Melee Burst, Gravity Whirlwind, Slash, and Berserk Combo. 5 and 6 got Ranged Clearing, Rapid Fire and Explosive Fireball. 7 got Holy Heal for support. 8 got Shadow Bind for crowd control. 9 got Wind Spirit Sprint for scouting. 10 got Shadow Stealth. I sent them into the next section of the dungeon. Money 1 dropped an Earth Barrier across the canyon entrance, and Money 2 locked aggro on the lava-heavy armored guards with Taunting Roar. Money 3 and 4 came in from the sides with Gravity Whirlwind Slash and Berserk Combo, and tore through the monster shells immediately. The formation worked exactly as designed from the first engagement. The new team ran smoothly from the first fight. Money 5 and 6 handled ranged clearing. Money 7 kept the tanks at full health, and Money 10 slipped in and out of stealth to take out priority targets. The coordination was immediate and clean. I figured the overall combat power had at least doubled compared to before the mutation. After that, I just ground dungeons. Hell Mode clears level after level, with the mutated Money Ghost team running like a machine. My level went from 118 to 122, then 128, 135, 150, 170 over the following weeks. The Lucky Coins passive kept drop rates high, and every few days I packaged up the excess equipment, materials, and skill books, and sent them back to Jiangcheng through the training camp's mail system. Every morning I did wealth recruitment with Little Orange Cat. At the start, it was pulling around 1.4 million gold per day. As the resources I shipped home got absorbed into the Fangfang Chamber of Commerce's operations and started generating returns, the number climbed. Half a month in, it hit 1.7 million per day. The chamber was clearly expanding fast into surrounding markets. The gold came back to me. I converted it into dungeon runs and resources, and those went back to the chamber. The cycle was working. Back in the training camp, the recruits had gone into a different gear entirely. Shenjing Lei was in the gravity room for over 3 hours at a stretch, ignoring anyone who told him to rest. Shi Yanqing was doing the same in the reaction chamber. The whole batch had flipped from demoralized to obsessed, and it was showing. Instructor Mo Jingxin told Instructor Xia Ji that the adaptation period for her pressure training program normally takes 10 days to 2 weeks minimum. This group had mostly completed it in under a week. She said having me in the training camp was genuinely useful for pushing people like them. Shenjing Lai hit level 200 and requested leave to do his second-class advancement quest. Instructor Mo Jingxin checked his eyes, approved it, and told him to come back victorious. The fact that he'd leveled up at all during a training period focused on combat skill meant he hadn't slept. He'd been grinding on top of training. In the level 200 Hell Mode dungeon, Bloody Ruins, Shenjing Lai was already covered in blood and surrounded. The level 200 second-class advancement quest had 3 tiers. 1 Hell Mode clear for S rank, 2 for SS rank, 3 consecutive clears without outside help for SSS rank. Shenjing Lai was on his 3rd run. His stamina and focus were basically gone from the first 2 clears. The final boss, the blood-crazy Slaughterer, swung 2 massive axes at him, and he couldn't dodge. His body was at its limit, and his vision was going dark. He was about to give up when my name came to mind. He decided that if he stopped here, he'd never be able to close the gap. He forced out one more burst. A new power he hadn't used before. Thunderous Wrath of the Heavens. Jumped, and landed a combined Blood Thunder strike that split the boss in half. SSS rank achieved. He knelt on the ground, vomiting blood afterward, then laughed. 20 minutes later, at the job change hall, the job change crystal exploded with a red light pillar that shot into the sky and turned the air over the entire training camp reddish-brown. Everyone in the camp felt the killing intent and flooded toward the hall. Under the crystal, Shenjing Lai watched the void tear open above him. A massive scarlet eye appeared on the other side. A god's gaze. The system told him his will and slaughter instinct had attracted the blood god's attention. His class transformed into Slaughter Heaven Bloodblade, Blood God's Attendant. His existing skills were immediately altered and their power multiplied. Instructors Mo Jingxin and Xia Ji arrived within seconds, threw up an isolation barrier around the area, and pulled Shenjing Lai into a private room before anyone else could get close. Instructor Xia Ji told him there was no problem. The opposite, in fact. He asked if Shenjing Lai knew what divinity was. Shenjing Lai didn't. Instructor Mo Jingxin explained, a small number of professionals attract a god's attention during a class advancement. If that happens, the professional gains divinity in their class transforms into a god's attendant, favored, or envoy variant. Instructor Xia Ji added that this normally happens at the 3rd or 4th advancement at the earliest. Shenjing Lai had gotten it at the 2nd, at level 200. Xia Ji said he was going to rise fast. Shenjing Lai took in what the instructors told him and lost his composure for a moment. He laughed out loud and said all the pain of the past weeks had been worth it. He asked if gods actually existed. The instructors said probably yes, but no professional had ever seen one directly. Then he asked whether I had divinity too. He figured my money ghosts couldn't be that strong through normal means. The instructors said that was personal information they couldn't share. Shenjing Lai read that as a yes. He decided that now he understood where my strength came from, and that he'd close the gap by getting divinity himself. He left feeling confident. That evening he found me coming out of the dungeon area and blocked my path. He looked different, a faint red aura around him, clearly changed from the advancement. He told me he'd gotten SSS rank and triggered a god's gaze during the advancement, giving him divinity. His new class was Slaughter Heaven Bloodblade, Blood God's Attendant. He watched my face for a reaction. I genuinely didn't know what any of that meant. The terms weren't in anything I'd read. I asked what divinity was. Shenjing Lai assumed I was pretending. He laid it out. Only a tiny number of heaven-favored professionals get divinity. It transforms their class beyond normal limits, and he was convinced I had it too. He said he'd finally caught up to me and that next month's competition would be different. Then he walked off looking pleased with himself. I stood there a bit confused. His words did give me something to think about, though. If divinity was a superclass transformation that a genius like Shenjing Lai barely unlocked at his 2nd advancement after an SSS rank challenge, then what did that make my situation? My starting class at First Awakening was already God of Wealth. No challenge, no advancement. It was just my base class from the beginning. That seemed like it might mean something. On the other side of the camp, Shen Jinglei walked into a level 200 hell mode dungeon called Blood Shadow Demon Cave, blood aura up, ready to test his new power. Shen Jinglei came out of his first dungeon run with the new class looking rough. Torn coat, sweat-soaked, 2 hours and 43 minutes on the clock. He'd expected a massive improvement and got a time worse than what I was doing before I even had the mutated money ghosts. He paced around trying to process it, then talked himself into a reasonable explanation. His class was single target burst, mine was a summon army. Different orientations, different dungeon efficiency. Direct combat was a different question. He convinced himself, drank a recovery potion, and went back in. 10 days later, I hit level 200. I went to the class transfer hall and put my hands on the crystal. The quest that generated stopped me cold. The task was to solo clear a same-level hell mode dungeon called Violent Wind Domain within a time limit. Under 20 minutes for S rank, under 15 for SS rank, under 10 minutes for SSS rank. My current fastest clear time was around 22 minutes. Under 10 minutes was a different category of problem entirely. Even ignoring every small enemy and running straight for the boss, the map traversal time alone made it nearly impossible. I checked what I had. My movement speed was already at 200% from equipment, so standard speed potions wouldn't help much. Road buying money could force open passages but couldn't teleport me across floors or skip to the end. Nothing I had on hand solved a 10-minute clear. This was the first real wall I'd hit since my class advancement. I wasn't willing to settle for S or SS rank. I decided to ask the instructors. They had levels and experience I didn't have access to in textbooks. At the Gravity Training Ground, Instructor Mo Jingxin was running Shen Jinglei and Shi Yanqing through drills, and Instructor Xiaji was watching from a chair with tea. I walked up and told them I had a problem and needed their help. The two instructors were visibly glad to see me. Apparently I hadn't spoken to either of them since the third day of training. When I told them I'd hit level 200 and gotten my second advancement quest, they were pleased. Then I told them the SSS rank requirement was a 10-minute clear of Violent Wind Domain. Instructor Xiaji nearly jumped out of his chair. Instructor Mo Jingxin grabbed my shoulder. Xiaji said he'd been in that dungeon himself. The map was huge, full of gale barriers and quicksand traps, and a max agility assassin ignoring everything and just running would need at least 20 minutes to reach the final boss area. A full clear in 10 minutes wasn't a quest for a human. Both of them went quiet for a moment. They worked through it seriously anyway. Xiaji said there were two directions, kill speed and map traversal speed. Kill speed wasn't the bottleneck. The money ghosts would one-shot most things. That left movement. They went through every option. Alchemy potions, priest buffs, rare movement talismans. All of it ran into the same problem. Buff effects have diminishing returns, and my base movement speed was already so high from equipment that stacking more wouldn't produce a meaningful result. They hit a wall. I told them not to worry about it and thanked them for trying. Instructor Xiaji stopped me and said this wasn't just my problem. SSS rank on a second advancement determines a professional's long-term ceiling, and the training camp had more than 2 instructors. He said they'd call a full meeting and pool everyone's knowledge. I thanked them and left. After I was gone, Instructor Mo Jingxin said the hardest advancement quest comes with the most powerful class, and what I had was the most powerful class either of them had ever seen. They sent word to every instructor in the camp. Instructor Mo Jingxin called a meeting with all 5 senior instructors. Besides herself and Instructor Xiaji, there was Instructor Lu Chen, a level 590 Void Arcanist named Kui Dao Yuan, and a level 580 Skyfire Commander named Shui Ting. Instructors Shui Ting and Kui Dao Yuan weren't taking it seriously at first. A student's second advancement problem didn't seem worth pulling 5 senior instructors together. Kui Dao Yuan suggested just lowering the rating requirements. Instructor Xiaji shut that down immediately. When Xiaji said the requirement was a 10-minute solo clear of Violent Wind Domain, the room went quiet. Shui Ting jumped out of his chair. Kui Dao Yuan stared. Instructor Lu Chen quietly asked if this was Lu Fang. When Xiaji confirmed it, Lu Chen froze. He'd personally brought me into the camp barely over a month ago when I was just past level 100. Now I was at level 200. Instructor Mo Jingxin filled in Shuiting and Kui Dao Yuan on the background. 18 years old, ordinary high school in Jiangcheng, first red versus blue competition ended with me clearing every other new recruit solo without anyone lasting a single exchange. After that, the 2 instructors who'd been skeptical were fully on board. Shuiting said letting a talent like that get stuck or downgraded at the second advancement would make them failures to the entire country. They got to work. The rule was I had to complete the quest alone. No one else inside. But nothing said external assistance was forbidden. They ran through every option. Speed buff items, large-scale displacement scrolls. Instructor Xiaji knocked both down. My base movement speed was already so high that more speed had almost no effect, and the Violent Wind Domain was full of spatial turbulence that would shred a level 200 professional trying to use displacement scrolls. Everything hit the same wall. Then Instructor Lu Chen, who'd been silent the whole meeting, looked up with an unusual expression and said, "If they couldn't change what I brought in, why not change the dungeon itself?" Instructor Lu Chen's idea was to compress the dungeon itself. Instructor Kui Dao Yuan picked up immediately. There were a small number of national-level powerhouses in the Dragon Kingdom who specialized in space laws. If they could be brought in, they could forcibly fold the violent wind domain's space down to a fraction of its size. A 1,000-mile map becomes 100 miles, or less. Map traversal time drops by more than 10 times, and a 10-minute clear becomes possible. Instructor Mo Jinxon shut it down straight away. Compressed space creates spatial barriers at the fold points, and a level 200 professional can't break through those. Instructor Lu Chen said I could. He told the room he'd personally seen me force open a spatial channel with a skill he didn't fully understand. Instructors Mo Jinxin and Xiaji stood up at that. Instructor Shui Ting wanted to know what kind of person I was. Kui Daoyuan said if that was true, the plan was feasible. Then they laid out the cost. Getting national-level powerhouses to compress a hell mode dungeon space was doable if they paid the right price. The second part was harder. Forcibly folding a complete hell mode instance causes irreversible damage. The violent wind domain would be destroyed permanently and removed from the map. They took 15 minutes of silence and then voted. All 5 raised their hands. Instructor Ziaji went to file the national-level proposal immediately. I was sitting outside the dungeon entrance with Little Orange Cat when the 2 instructors came to find me. They explained the plan. Compress the dungeon space. I use road buying money to break through the spatial barriers at the fold points. Instructor Lu Chen had told them about the skill. I confirmed I could do it. Then Instructor Ziaji told me the full terms. A forcibly compressed dungeon's rules break down completely. It can only hold together for 15 minutes before collapsing for good. 1 attempt. If I didn't clear it in time, the dungeon was gone and I'd have nothing. I sat with that for a moment. A complete level 200 hell mode instance was a national resource. They were willing to destroy it permanently just so I could get an SSS rank advancement rating. I told the instructors I'd bring back SSS rank. Instructor Xiaji ruffled my hair and said new dungeons appeared in the world every year and were contested between countries in international tournaments. He said once I advanced, I should win one back for the Dragon Kingdom. I said I would, and not just one. The next morning, I went to the Violent Wind Domain entrance. All 5 senior instructors were there. I met Kui Daoyuan and Shui Ting properly for the first time. Zhu Ting threatened to put me in the gravity room every day if I didn't get SSS rank. I told him not to worry. Instructor Ziaji brought out a white jade box sealed with talismans. Inside was a deep blue bead that seemed to have something like galaxies shifting inside it. The mustard seed void pearl, made overnight by the Dragon Kingdom's strongest spatial expert, the Void Emperor. The instructions were simple. Step through the dungeon gate, crush it immediately. The pearl would compress the entire 1,000-mile dungeon down to 10 miles. The compression would take 2 minutes. That left 8 minutes for the actual clear. 8 minutes in a level 200 hell mode dungeon, fighting through 10 miles of monsters and spatial barriers to the final boss. I took the pearl and went in. The moment I was through the portal, all 5 instructors visibly deflated. Instructor Ziaji wiped sweat off his forehead and admitted he'd been forcing himself to look confident. Instructor Kui Daoyuan pulled up a live projection of the dungeon on a light screen. The 5 of them stood there watching it, senior experts who could shake entire regions, looking like people waiting on exam results, barely breathing. Inside the dungeon, violent gales hit me the moment I landed. I crushed the pearl without stopping. A dark blue beam tore through the dungeon ceiling, and an enormous illusory hand reached through the opening, so large it blocked everything above, with lines across the palm that looked like galaxy paths. It pressed down lightly, and the compression began. The compression took 2 minutes. The dungeon folded in on itself, mountain ranges and valleys hundreds of miles away crumpling toward the center like paper. I was protected inside a bubble that came out of the shattered pearl and felt nothing while the world outside it collapsed. When it dissipated, the dungeon was 10 miles across, and I could see the boss lair from where I stood. The problem was that every monster from a 1,000-mile dungeon was now packed into 10 miles. The density had multiplied over 100 times. Gale demon wolves, heavy armored sandstone demons, void-splitting wind eagles, all stacked on top of each other with almost no gaps. And scattered across the compressed space were the gray, translucent spatial barriers from the fold points. Outside, the instructors looked at the monster density on the screen and went quiet. Instructor Xiaji said he wasn't worried about the killing. He was worried about the time. 8 minutes for all of that. Then the first wave came at me. Hundreds of Hellgrade void-splitting stormhounds charging at full speed. I called out the money ghosts and said one word. Kill. Under 5 seconds. Hundreds of Hellgrade elites gone. Outside, Instructor Shui Ting was stuttering. Kui Daoyuan's glasses were crooked and he didn't notice. Instructors Mo Jingxian and Xiaji realized the money ghosts looked completely different from before. Different heights, different builds, using coordinated tactics. They worked out that the skill had evolved further, and the power had jumped by more than 10 times. 30 seconds in, I'd pushed through the first wave and was standing in front of the first spatial barrier. The first spatial barrier was right there. Instructor Kui Daoyuan said even he would need 10 seconds of chanting to open a path through it without causing a collapse. I touched it with 2 fingers and paid the road-buying money cost. 1 million gold. The barrier parted like a curtain being pulled aside. I walked through with the money ghosts behind me. Outside, Kui Daoyuan grabbed his own hair. Instructor Siaji admitted to Instructor Mo Jing-sin that after a month of watching me, he still had no idea what my ceiling was. The second, third, and fourth barriers went the same way. The money ghosts cleared the monsters between them. 6 minutes in, I was standing at the final boss altar. Storm Monarch Solon. 3 wolf heads, wings like bladed weapons, coiled at the center of a 1,000-foot altar surrounded by tornadoes. Instructor Siaji explained the problem to the others outside. The boss had a home field passive called Hurricane Divine Healing that recovered 1% of its max HP every second as long as the wind field was active. 2 minutes left, and a boss that could out-heal sustained damage meant a war of attrition wasn't an option. I sent the money ghosts in for control and opened with everything. Arrows, fireballs, shadow blades. The healing light came back faster than the damage went in. The boss taunted me about it. I extended my hand and activated Money Talks. A giant gold coin condensed from pure golden energy dropped straight onto the boss's head. 1 hit, 1.5 million damage. 1 wolf head caved in, the shield pierced straight through, and the HP bar dropped a massive chunk. Outside, Instructor Lu Chen stood up for the first time. He identified it as true damage. Skill type that bypasses all shields and resistances, normally only accessible to professionals above level 400. 1.5 million in a single hit at level 200. The problem was the healing. The boss's HP was already climbing back up at visible speed. Money Talks had no cooldown, just a 3-second windup between shots. I fired 5 consecutive hits in 15 seconds. 5 shots, 7.5 million true damage total. The healing couldn't keep up with that. The Storm Monarch went down on the 5th hit. Total time, 8 minutes and 18 seconds. SSS rank cleared. Outside, Instructor Zia Ji was laughing before I even stepped out of the portal. Instructor Mo Jingson leaned against the wall, looking relieved. Shuiting wiped sweat off his forehead and told Kui Daoyuan it was a good thing they'd voted yes. Letting a talent like that get stuck at the second advancement would have made them failures to the country. When I came out, Instructor Zia Ji slapped me on the shoulder hard enough to make the air hum. I thanked all 5 of them directly and said I wouldn't have finished it without the dungeon modification. They were genuinely moved. Apparently a lot of powerful people lose their humility once they get strong. Instructor Zia Ji told me to stop being polite and go submit the quest. At the class transfer hall, I ran into Wei Ming from Shenji Academy at the door. He'd just finished his 3rd class advancement with an SSS rank and was feeling good about it. He was the last of the top academy recruits to finish the 3rd advancement, and he'd been self-conscious about that. Now he'd matched or beaten most of them on rating. He saw me walking into the hall and froze. The class transfer hall is only visited at specific level thresholds. He tried to dismiss the thought, but it kept coming back. I was heading in for my 2nd advancement. He told himself it was impossible. I'd been in the camp barely a month. His own 2nd advancement hadn't happened until his 2nd year of academy. He stepped into the shadow of a pillar and watched to see what I was actually there for. I pressed my hands on the crystal. It started shaking at a frequency I hadn't seen before. Then a pillar of pure gold light erupted from its core, tore through the ceiling of the class transfer hall, and shot into the sky. The entire sky over the training camp turned gold. Golden clouds, golden rain scattering across the grounds, and faint sounds like chanting from somewhere in the clouds. The phenomenon was visibly larger in scale than what happened when Shen Jinglei got his blood god's favor. Wei Ming, still hiding by the pillar, got the light directly in his eyes and covered his face with both hands. Everyone in the camp dropped what they were doing and ran toward the hall. Inside the pillar, the system confirmed.